All right, we're going to open the floor for some questions for Peter. There you go.
It was, as I said, it was supposed to be a 10-minute thing, a 10-minute sort of travelogue of Montreux, and we ended up with that. I hope you got something from it. It took me through quite a journey while he was doing that. But it should also have answered some of the questions that you'd already started preparing. So it saves us a little bit of time. Before you have your questions, and I'll answer them, I'll answer all of them. Earlier on this morning, early afternoon, someone read my mind. We were sitting in the dining room section. And I just want to say what was going through my mind that was said, I am so happy to be here. So now, your turn. See, no questions. Totally. Yes. Well, there was a friend of his in London who he never went. I mean, he was a good friend of Freddie's, so Freddie knew him, knew the situation around him and everything. And something, I mean, in his life at that point, everything just fell apart. In that his mother died, money went, everything. No, Freddie, he didn't go to Freddie. He could easily have gone to Freddie. But Freddie knew, and he helped him through with everything that he could. In that he bought an apartment for him and just made sure everything was okay. Before he died, there was the three of us in Garden Lodge, Jim, Hutton, Joe Finelli, myself. He bought Joe Finelli a house. This was within the last sort of 8 months of his life. He bought Joe Finelli a house. He gave Jim the money to build a house, and he paid off my mortgage so that we would have somewhere to go when the work finished and he was no longer around. He would always have his eyes open to see how he could do things for his friends. He never waited to be asked. It would be done, because he was in a position to be able to do it.
We know that there's an upcoming biopic about Freddie.
Yeah.
What do you think about the selection of Sacha Baron
I'm not allowed to say anything about anything. Okay. I am hoping he will surprise all of us. The thing is, you have to remember, Freddie was this big, Sacha Baron Cohen is this big. All of you know Sacha Baron Cohen for one of the characters he has portrayed, rather than for him, himself, his own name. That somehow points in a good direction because something is stuck in your brain of the way he's created a character. Hopefully he's going to be able to do the same with Freddie. I mean, and no actor on this earth wants to be known as the person who messed up Freddie's life. So, he is going to really do what he can to make it right, I think. No. not when the first germ of the idea appeared. Basically how that came about was that Freddie liked listening to operatic tenors, Domingo, Pavarotti, Carreras, and so I said to him, this was in very early 1981, look, you like listening to Pavarotti. Do you realize that, in fact, the opera recording world is quite similar to rock? You go, you create an album, you then go on tour to promote the whole thing. With an opera, a record company will get a group of artists together, they will record it, and then major opera houses around the world will try and get as many of that cast to take to perform that opera. Oh, how about that? He says, and I said, look, you like the way Pavarotti's voice sounds on record, why don't you come and hear him live? See what you think the difference is. And it just so happened that Pavarotti was appearing at the Royal Opera House about a week later in an opera. He said, okay, right, we go. So I got tickets. We were sitting down, and I was dreading the whole thing, in fact, because Freddie never really had a great attention span. He got bored very, very quickly. And I thought, this is a 2.5-hour opera, plus intervals. I mean, I could see us walking out, within 40 minutes. But, okay, Pavarotti comes on, he sings the first, and he says, hey, this is good. It's as good as the recording, but it's more exciting because it's live, it's real. And then there's the second scene, there's a small trio. The soprano makes her entrance, mezzo-soprano and tenor. And the soprano just sort of started singing, and Freddie's mouth, the jaw, just sort of fell open. And for the 5 minutes that they were singing, he just could not stop watching. It finished, and as he was applauding and everything, he said, when are we going to hear more of her? Will she be coming back? Well, who is it? What is it? And I checked the program, and it was Montserrat Caballé. And that was the moment he fell in love with that voice. Up until then, all interviews, when asked who he considered the greatest voice, was Aretha Franklin, was, all of that. But from then on, it became Montserrat Caballé. And he really meant it. And, he never dreamt that, because she was this amazing, star at the top of her, her field, who she would dream of doing something with him, He did an interview in Spain on the tour. She heard it. They sort of management got together and effected a meeting. And it was at that meeting that he first played. You actually heard a little bit on there with Freddie doing the falsetto of Exercising with Free Love, which became Ensueño. And she fell in love with that piece. And from that, it was Montserrat who demanded an album rather than just the 2 tracks, which would have been, the single. And he just could not believe that she wanted to do it, that it was actually going to happen. In the end, he did an amazing job. I love the fact that it has been re-released later this year. I was, in fact, lucky enough to be in the studio in Prague in March when the 83-piece orchestra was being recorded. It just really just sent goosebumps. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. I was there, in 87, 88 when the album was produced, and it was almost every single bit was done on a keyboard. You know, the whole orchestra recreated on a keyboard, but then to be sitting in this massive studio in Prague with 83 musicians in it, and just listening to that amazing, amazing sound. I mean, you cannot beat the real thing. It was stunning. And buy it.
Peter, do you have an opinion why Montserrat wanted to sing with Freddie?
She, basically, it was reverse to what happened to him. She heard that Freddie loved her voice. It was at the time when Red Pretender had been released, and she loved that. And so she got her management to try to get hold of more of Freddie. And she said, because what happened, at that time, Barcelona had been picked, to do the Olympics. And Montserrat and her brother, as her manager, they had been picked to do the entertainment, the opening ceremony and everything. And it was Montserrat who came up with the idea of who better to create, a song for the Olympics than Freddie Mercury. I don't want to. Freddie never expressed a wish to have children. I think he didn't really want the responsibility of them, because once you have them, they're yours for life. It's not as though you can take it and then give it away when you're bored with it. Yeah. No, he was incredibly happy with his cats, because they were, people own dogs, cats own humans. And that's what he loved. He loved their independence. He knew that if they missed a couple of meals, it wouldn't matter because there'd be something in the garden they'd find.
Or they'd go visit a neighbor.
But, he never expressed a wish for children.
Hey, sir. Did Freddie ever go back to India or East Africa once the emigration?
Not to my knowledge. They left Zanzibar when he was, I think, about 17. And he never went back. He very, very rarely spoke about anything before arriving in Felton. He just pushed that part of his life away.
When he became Mercury?
No, he was still Bolsara, but it was when he was once he'd arrived in England, he just sort of pushed that part away from him. He very, very rarely spoke about it. I mean, every now and then a few words, but it was not a topic that was brought up by any of his friends either, because they knew it just made him uncomfortable.
And he wasn't particularly religious.
No.
I read in your book actually that in the last few days he was mumbling. He was praying, was it?
Nobody really knows. Nobody knows. He never professed a faith. He was buried according to Zoroastrian rites because I was the one to organize his funeral. And the way I felt was that the world had been lucky enough to have him for 20 years. That it was only right that he went back to his parents for those last few days. So he was cremated according to their wishes and according to what they wanted.
Did you have a favorite of Freddie's cats?
Did I?
Did you have a favorite of Freddie's cats?
Oh, too right, I did. And it wasn't his one. No, Delilah was the most spoiled little on earth. He wrote a song about her. And she really could do anything she wanted. The cat that arrived with Delilah was this tiny, tiny little black cat called Goliath. The smallest black cat you could ever wish, called Goliath. He was so sweet. He would spend hours just draped around my neck. But I don't know if you know this about black cats, they actually dribble quite a lot. So there's always this wonderful going on in my right ear and all wet on the right side. But I didn't care. I really did not care. He looked beautiful. He had the most wonderful temperament. He was just so sweet. Sweet. So yes, Goliath was the best.
I know you said no tears or anything,
Yeah, get rid of them.
Yeah, no, forget it, that's impossible. But did you ever see him actually cry? And not just sickness, but at any time, happiness, sadness, or...
Oh, now I've got to start thinking. No, not really. Not really. He could hold emotions in. Anger, as I said on there, was easiest to let out because you just shout, and whoever's the nearest you shout at them. But we knew that, so it was okay. It wasn't personal. It wasn't to us. He just wanted. But no, okay, the nearest perhaps was of joy when the first take of Barcelona, when the first time that Montserrat was singing on the track, and he was in the control room, and he was almost crying, saying, "I have now got the best voice in the world singing my music." That was really something for him. I never saw any. Maybe when he was in bed, maybe. I don't know, I never saw any. Occasionally, maybe near, again with frustration, in a dressing room after a show, after he destroyed the mirror and he couldn't do his hair anymore. But, that sort of thing, but not of emotions that we would lose our control over. Well, I don't know. Before before he accepted you working there properly, there was a big bond of trust built up. So, I don't know that it would. I can speak of back then, and in 12 years, I never signed a contract. No, there was nothing. And everything just, you just took it on faith. Nowadays, well, you see the whole thing. Back then, Freddie wouldn't go out on his own, basically because he didn't know what he would do on his own. But then he never went out surrounded by 20 bodyguards. You are attracting attention to yourself. You are attracting it all to you if you're going to do that. If he ever went out, he would only go out, he'd go out with one person who would hold in the money, who would be doing everything for him anyway. It's very, very strange, this, as you say, this celebrity culture, that nowadays someone who comes on those reality TV things.
60-page contract that you would have to go back to
Yeah.
a lawyer before you signed it to work for someone.
Yeah. And then there's this whole thing, but I mean, who are these celebrities? You know, I mean, okay, I can think of quite a few names I would bring up here, but they're names that would mean something to you, but I wouldn't. Miss Kardashian, where did she come from? And yet she's a huge star. You know, I don't understand it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Well, he's an artist.
First time I ever met him, he said to me, I'm first thing he was getting off the flight, getting changed, going to dinner, going next to him to where he has his costume. Then next year, he went again. And he turned around and it was very amazing.
Yeah. Oh, of course. He was an artiste.
I've really gone to quite a few clubs in New York. What were some favorite places in New York? Do you know?
West Village.
Well, the one place we always ended up was the Anvil. It was on its own little block in the middle, and there was a meat market just around there on that corner there. It was just because it was a place that you would go to after everyone else was closing down. And so all the barmen he knew would be ending up there.
What about restaurants?
2 restaurants we went to quite a lot. One was Pearls, and it really, really surprised him because it was one of the few restaurants in the world that refused to take credit cards. So we always had to make sure I went to the bank the day we were going to go to Pearls because you had to pay cash for it. There was Uncle Charlie's in the village. There was a restaurant, and